Welcome, everybody, to Postgame Takeaways with Inside ND Sports. I'm Tyler James. He's the one and only Eric Hansen. We cover Notre Dame football, recruiting, and more for InsideNDSports.com on the Rivals Network. And we're here to share our postgame takeaways from Notre Dame's Blue-Gold game scrimmage, which ended in a 28-21 victory for the blue team. But before we get to our takeaways, I wanted to remind our viewers of a special promotion we're running on InsideNDSports.com that expires Monday. If you buy a new subscription to the site for 1 month, you can get 3 additional months for free. All you have to do is use the promo code NDSPRING24 when you sign up to get access to our premium analysis and recruiting coverage and special access to us over on the Insider Lounge, where we spend a lot of our time and share our inside information. First, there's a link to sign up in the video description, and it's all over our website too. All right, now it's time for the takeaways. So take it away, Eric. What was your biggest takeaway from the Blue Gold game?
Well, I'll preface it by saying, and I wrote this, that the exercise of the Blue Gold game is separating what's mirage and what's real and usable information. And there's good and bad that falls into that category. But I really enjoyed watching the quarterbacks today. Riley Leonard also enjoyed watching the quarterbacks from on the field. He had a headset on and was shadowing the plays. But I got a sense of who Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr could be down the road. And I got a good sense of what kind of battle Riley Leonard's going to get from Steve Angeli. And I think that the quarterback play was really positive today. And I'm glad that they mixed it up. And I'm glad the two younger guys were live, because I think some of Kenny Minchie's maybe better runs would have been called as sacks. So for me, that was the big takeaway. But there were a lot of interesting aspects. How about you? What's your number one?
Yeah, well, let me talk about the quarterbacks first. I think that Minchie was elusive with his legs, although that was good to see. He had the one big mistake with the interception that he threw, that he was being pressured, and he just sort of threw it up, I think, to Cooper Flanagan, and Luke Talich came down with the interception, probably an ill-advised throw. And I think he made a few of those that he was just like scrambling and running for his life and kind of making throws. He has sort of you sort of understand what Gino Guidugli talking about when he calls him a gunslinger, because he can just throw it from such weird angles and from such a weird body positions and get rid of it. But sometimes he does that and tries to give his team a chance to make a play, which could end up in a play for the other team. And so you have to sort of limit those mistakes. But besides that, there weren't a lot of big errors necessarily from the offense. The strip sack of Minchie, which is just a bad spot when it's the end of the half and you're dropping back and RJ Oben's coming for you. There's not a lot you can do in that situation. Steve Angeli, I think he had one pass where it was like he had a pretty open Eli Raritan and just made a bad throw. But otherwise, they were pretty on target. Not a ton of downfield passes, although we saw a little bit more of it late in the game, maybe picking on some defensive backs that probably weren't.
Who was that got burned on the double move on Chris Mitchell? Who was that?
That was Isaiah Dunn, I believe. Okay. I think was that, who actually I think we've been complimentary before. It was probably one of the better walk-ons that Notre Dame has, but
he broke both kneecaps on that, I think.
Yeah, he got really fooled by Chris Mitchell there. But so yeah, I think the quarterback play was positive. I think it reflects what we've been talking about from sort of 1 to 4. It's hard to recall a quarterback room that had this much depth that Notre Dame has right now. And that showed itself in the Blue Gold game. I think the biggest takeaway for me was how good the defensive ends looked, how good the defensive line looked, rushing the passer. You're talking about a group that was getting after the quarterback pretty regularly. Kenny Minchie escaped a couple of sacks that probably a lot of people would have been sacked for. Like you mentioned, he was just showing really good athleticism back there. Jason Onye had two sacks. Jordan Botello, RJ Oben, Boubacar Traore, and Bryce Young each had a sack. And that's a good sign for Notre Dame, and it's pass rush. I think the reverse is, I think it's a continued bad sign for Notre Dame. A number of those sacks on the edge came against Notre Dame's projected starting tackles. And I just don't know what what the excuse for it is. Like, are they just getting beat? Why does this seem to be happening when we're watching them? Why is there?
You're the jinx, Tyler. That's what it is.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I feel like I'm being made a crazy person by saying, hey, the tackles are not playing well, and every time I watch them, they don't seem like they're playing well. So I just don't know what the answer is there.
Well, the answer was on the field, although he plays guard, and that was Quentin Nelson. He was introduced, and they couldn't sneak him into the game, or that would have evened things up a little bit. Yeah, the offensive line is going to be really the unfolding story in fall camp, and it's really, I think, the position group that's going to most affect Notre Dame's ceiling. I think you look around the rest of the team, and they've established a really good floor that this is a team that's going to compete for a playoff spot. I think the offensive line can push them toward winning a playoff game or having a better record than maybe even 11-1 if that can develop. And there's a lot of time left, but yeah, I think there were some spots today, but that's part of the bad mirage part of, I think, the blue gold game is when you don't have the continuity of working next to the guys that you're used to. But you're right. I mean, when we did see them in last week's scrimmage, they were working together with the guys that they're used to.
And when you're getting beat around the edge one-on-one as a tackle, it doesn't matter who's playing next to you. The guard wasn't doing anything to help you in that situation. You have to make the pass block. So like that, it doesn't matter. I can understand if they're getting home on stunts and that's causing issues and stuff like that, but that didn't seem to be the case with most of the sacks that happened today. It just seems that the defensive line was winning one-on-one battles in a lot of situations to get to the quarterback.
So did anybody surprise you today?
Surprise-wise, I would say Kanukia.
Yeah.
And just because we haven't seen a lot of him, it's not like I didn't think that he was capable of doing that, but we just haven't had a chance to see him go out there and do it. And he was all over the place. Saw a little bit of that in the scrimmage the previous week that we saw on Saturday in the stadium that fans didn't get access to. But he was running around like crazy. He had a couple of big hits there.
He had
and
a
I thought was really impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had a textbook decleater. I can't remember who he hit now, but it was wow. And he had 12 total tackles, 2 for losses.
Yeah. So an impressive day there. I guess Jason Anye would be a little bit of a surprise for him to have 2 sacks. Like, we like Jason Anye, but for him to have 2 sacks in a game, granted, one was against Tai Chan, which is probably a mismatch. Tai Chan has been an offensive tackles moving inside the guard and probably just can't handle the power of Jason Anye. But to the other sack he had, he beat Billy Strouth and Sam Pendleton between the two of them. And so that's a situation where you wouldn't expect him to win. And for him to do that was a good thing. So those are probably the first 2 that come to mind in terms of surprises. Who surprised you?
Yeah, I would have put Kia at the top of my list. I thought Luke, I've been a Luke Talich honk since the beginning of the spring, but today he exceeded my expectations. He had 7 tackles, had a nice interception, and he had a fumble recovery. So he was all over the place. He did not get fooled on a double move. So that was a plus. I mean, Micah Gilbert, we've been hearing about him all spring, and yet it was still interesting to see him get 2 touchdown receptions today. I mean, some people down the depth, I'll tell you, Jack Larson surprised me, given that, a couple weeks ago, Mike Denbrock was lamenting that he was having trouble lining up in the right spot. He was lining up in the right spot and catching a few passes. And a shout out to Devin Ford. Notre Dame got a little thin in the running back room because Jabron Payne got nicked up a little bit in the game. So he went over and started playing running back. He's been at defensive back all spring and came in and he caught a pass for 13 yards after dropping one. And he had a 13-yard run, and that was really cool to see.
Yeah, and speaking of Gilbert, I was impressed by him again. The first touchdown came against Micah Bell, who isn't one of Notre Dame's top cornerbacks, but is a slouch either. And I thought it was
He's fast,
fairly decent coverage. Like Bell
Yeah.
was running with Gilbert, and then Gilbert sort of separated as the ball came to him, and I think played it more like a veteran, and sort of used his body to separate and kept the route inside when he knew the ball was going to be outside, and then could sort of leak out to the outside as the ball was coming his way. So gave himself a nice chance for the touchdown there. The other touchdown came against, I think Mickey Brown was the cornerback on him, and he just sort of ran past him. And then Luke Talich tried to get over to make a play, but Luke couldn't get over in time. That would have been an incredible play if Talich would have been able to sort of stop
been a Kyle
that.
Hamilton play.
Yeah, but he was close, but he wasn't able to. He wasn't able to make the play. Talich ended up, I think, taking out Mickey Brown in his diving effort. But I guess sort of a shout out to Marty Auer. I was expecting Micah Gilbert to make some plays maybe more early and often, because Marty Auer was the cornerback who lined up against him, who was a walk-on who has been a safety for most of his career. And so it just felt like that's like not a matchup that would work in Marty Auer's favor. And I don't know, like early on that we saw a lot from Micah Gilbert. So I thought, I know sometimes we might be ragging on some of the walk-ons for some of their plays and giving up plays, but I wanted to give a shout out to Marty Auer for seemingly doing a pretty good job against Micah Gilbert for most of the game.
Amen.
All right. Anything else you want to highlight, Eric?
Well, a couple of things. After the game, Marcus Freeman mentioned that Notre Dame is going to go after a punter in the transfer portal.
Right.
And also, I thought what he said about the new facility that was, I don't know, unveiling is what I want to say. There was a ceremonial groundbreaking for the Jack and Kathy Shields Family Hall, which is going to be a complement, kind of an expansion of the Guglielmino Athletics Complex. Sounds terrific, state of the art. I mean, Notre Dame has needed this, but Marcus Freeman was pointed in his narrative about this, because Brian Kelly left the impression that, Notre Dame might be losing recruits because of not having the best facilities, and that's the reason why Brian left. And so Marcus addressed that if they lost a recruit because of facilities, then it probably wasn't a recruit worth having. And he also said that didn't happen. But he also talked about how much this is going to mean to the vision of where Notre Dame wants to be as a football program. And I thought that was pretty interesting in the post game.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know. I think you talk out of both sides of your mouth a little bit when it comes to recruiting with that kind of stuff, because I was there when the groundbreaking was happening. They intentionally had recruits gathered around to watch it happen and to hear the speakers, and Pete Pavacqua and Marcus Freeman were addressing them directly, saying, recruits, this is a sign of our dedication to what it means to be a student athlete at Notre Dame. And so it is a part of the recruiting pitch. They haven't even broken the ground yet, and they were already
something they can sell for 2 years until it opens in the fall of 2026.
Right. So it is going to be a part of the recruiting pitch, and it does matter. Benjamin Morrison spoke at that event and said he made time to check out the indoor, and that really resonated with him on his visit. It was actually something that may have not happened if he didn't make a point to see it. And he sort of spoke about how it matters because that's where those guys are spending all their time, and it to have those a place where you feel like you can be the best, to compete to be the best, and feel comfortable doing that, and a place that's just like putting you in the best position. That is really what recruits and players want to see. And so it'll be a big part of recruiting pitches, I'm sure. But on the other side, like Marcus Freeman said, they're probably not losing a lot of recruits necessarily because of what the Guglielmino Athletics Complex looks like, or what the Irish Indoor Athletic Center looks like, because those are pretty decent facilities as is.
Before we go, and before we mention our great offer that's scrolling at the bottom of the screen right now, I wanted to circle back to the quarterbacks. What do you envision happening, unfolding this summer? When do you feel like we're going to have 1 through 4 order, or 1 through 3 order, if it's that if that be the case? How do you think this is going to play out post spring game?
I think someone transfers just because I that's the way I operate. It's just not very common to see 4 quarterbacks stick around like that in college football. So I don't know who that will be. I think the obvious leading candidates would be the 2 guys in the middle, potentially Steve Angeli and Kenny Minchie. And the quarterback competition, whoever's there, I think will play out with Riley Leonard being the starter. I still think CJ Carr is going to be the 3rd guy going into the season, if not in reality, if it came to time to play a game, but at least on paper to keep that 2nd guy from leaving too. So I think that's just the way it's going to go. For as much as we want to talk about the competition, I think it's probably going to be played in a way that tries to keep the guys invested as much as they can.
Let me ask you this, Tyler. I mean, Riley Leonard is the competition at the top of the depth chart, but do you think working into those decisions of the 2 guys in the middle that CJ Carr, his progress, do you think it has affected maybe that conversation they have in their head?
I think it could. You would think that would maybe impact Minchie more than Angeli. Now, this is me not speaking for them. I don't know exactly how they're thinking.
No,
this is me trying to imagine how they're. I'm not doing any reporting here. This is just me trying to put myself in their shoes. I think that they have to be aware of that. I mean, and it's not because what we're saying about CJ Carr. It's what they're seeing in practice that CJ Carr does. They're seeing the throws that he makes on a daily basis. They see the film. They know the reads that he's making. They know how advanced he looks for someone his age. And so they know that whatever happens this season, if I'm sticking around for next season, I got CJ Carr to deal with. And so that could play a role in what my decision is going into this next season. So I think that just only adds to the potential of someone deciding to check out other options elsewhere.
Now, we didn't sit next to each other today because Tyler didn't wear deodorant. No, I'm just kidding. It was because I had to do radio. So I was in a different booth. So we haven't talked about this previously. Were you as impressed with CJ Carr today as you were in the closed scrimmage the week before?
There might have been a couple more throws in the closed scrimmage that I thought were wow throws.
Yeah.
But it was just it was more of a continuation of what we saw. And it's like, man, what do you want him to do? It's just like there's plays where I think it even got there's one that maybe he got called back for maybe an offensive hold. A penalty where he just he's scrambling and he finds someone open and it's like, wow, he makes that look way too easy. It shouldn't look that easy. There was one, I think he leaked out to the right, made it look easy and threw it on the money to Deion Colsey. It's just the throws that he makes look so easy that aren't easy. I mean, I think people who have watched Notre Dame quarterbacks for the last decade know that these throws aren't easy because they haven't seen a lot of quarterbacks make them. But I think CJ Carr just has that innate ability as a quarterback and just doesn't. I mean, we're not seeing him under a lot of pressure and like game pressure certainly, but he just doesn't seem to get rattled. I imagine that will come in some ways at some point during his career, but I haven't seen it yet.
In the last 2 weeks, I've seen him throw one ill-advised pass, and that was the one that almost got picked off today that Deion Colsey kind of batted it out of, I think, Christian Gray's hands. Mm-hmm. But he keeps his eyes down the field and he extends plays, and it's really fun to watch him. So,
yeah, and I think it was important that those guys were alive, right? Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr, like they could show that ability to do that, but then they also had the ability to get hurt or get hit. You know what I mean? Like you can pay the consequence for not.
Jason Anye made sure that that Steve Angeli knew he was there, even though he had a red jersey on.
Yeah, I think Angeli hit the ground just as much as the other guys, even if he wasn't supposed to be getting taken to the ground. Because
the first one I thought that was kind of an embellishment. Maybe he lost his balance, but the second one, Jason definitely pushed him down.
Yep, but I thought it was a good blow-go game. I think we can walk out of the Notre Dame Stadium after the spring game like, man, I'm glad that's over. That was a snoozer. But I thought today was a fairly entertaining contest and not necessarily in the score like who's going to win this, but just in the situation that the teams were put in, the competition between the two teams, it seemed like the teams were pretty balanced. And I sort of liked how the two teams went at it today.
Yeah, and I think the most deceptive thing is if you say, "Wow, that's a lot of points for Al Golden's defense to give up." I mean, it was skewed for a lot of reasons for them to give up a little bit more points today. Personnel, vanilla scheme,
Right.
and things of that nature. But I think what we saw in the Jersey scrimmage, we saw the real Al Golden defense, and they're going to be very good.
Yeah, and Al Golden's defense didn't have the advantage of having an actual punter pinning someone in their own.
Although they credited Goins and Mitch Jeter with 2 punts each. They didn't punt by rule.
In one commercial break, media timeout, they had Eric Goins doing punts to a fan, and she eventually caught one. It was pretty cool, but that might, especially if Notre Dame gets someone in the portal, as Marcus Freeman expressed, that might be the most notable punt of Eric Goins' Notre Dame tenure. Yeah, just again, like a good day out of the stadium, a cold, chilly day. So thoughts with anyone who was out there in the cold. You really had to earn your fandom today to be out there in that weather. Thankfully, it was dry, but it wasn't necessarily a very nice day. Although it warmed up as the day went on, but it was chilly and cold for most of the day here in South Bend. All right, that'll do it for post-game takeaways. Make sure you check out the rest of our Blue Gold game coverage over on InsideNDSports.com, and make sure you take advantage of our buy 1 month, get 3 month subscription deal with promo code NDSpring24. That expires on Monday, so make sure you take advantage of it ASAP. We'll be back on Monday night for Football Never Sleeps, and I better see some of you over there on the Insider Lounge between now and then, and have a great Sunday.